A city in California has passed an anti harassment ordinance that would set up well meaning, law abiding landlords with devastating lawsuits. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the great state of California. Now, one city in California has recently passed a anti-harassment ordinance, right? Because they thought that, hey, there are so many bad landlords here that are harassing tenants that we're going to pass this law. Well, I want to dispel the myths and, BS immediately. And I'll say this right now, before I even get into the article, that 99% of landlords are doing everything right. They follow all the laws, they treat their tenants with respect, and they only want to run their businesses and not have to worry about anything. There are a few, very, very few bad landlords out there. But passing these new laws and rules and regulations, trying to get those bad landlords, what it ends up doing is it hurts the good ones. And the good ones are the ones who end up getting sued. The good ones are the ones who end up getting fined or, just forced out of business or pushed into financial despair. And that's why I hate these sort of laws, okay? These tenants, they don't understand that, hey, you know what? The very small minority of landlords who are doing this bad stuff, well, guess what? They already have laws against that stuff in place, and they're not going to stop doing it just because there's a new law put in place. Okay, so what are we accomplishing with the law? We're accomplishing nothing other than, hurting good landlords. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think of anti-harassment laws? Okay, where, it is against the law for a landlord to do certain things which they consider harassing the tenant. And I'm going to cover what those things are while I go over this article because, some of it sounds like common sense, but some of it, that there's already laws in place that cover this stuff. So it doesn't really make much sense that this city thinks they need to pass a new law for it. So this article is coming from Mercury News, and it says, Concord passes tenant anti-harassment ordinance over landlords' objections. And I believe Concord is a city in the Bay Area of California. So that should tell you right there just how, left-leaning, progressive, etc. this town really is. But let's get into the article and see what it says. The Concord City Council passed an ordinance designed to protect renters from harassment Tuesday night after hearing testimony about landlords and property managers barging into tenants' homes without permission, refusing to perform basic maintenance, and even threatening tenants with a gun. The ordinance, which was a year in the making, makes it illegal for landlords to interfere with their tenants' peaceful enjoyment of their home by doing things such as engaging in unnecessary renovations inside the unit, entering the unit at odd times of day or night, failing to keep up the property, or otherwise intimidating or abusing a tenant. Tenant advocates cheered the measure, which they said is necessary to hold bad landlords accountable for their unacceptable behavior. On the other side, landlords groups argued the ordinance does nothing but lays traps that set well-meaning, law-abiding property owners up for potentially devastating lawsuits. So yeah, I got to agree with the landlords there, okay? So yeah, there's going to be a lot of good landlords who get caught up in this mess because it's vague, okay? The ordinance is vague on purpose because that way they can, manipulate it any way they want to in order to screw over the landlord. So they say stuff in there like engaging in unnecessary renovations inside the unit, right? Well, sometimes, what does that mean? If there is something that needs to be repaired and you need to go into that unit to repair it, then a landlord, they should be able to just give notice and be able to get in there, okay? They say entering the unit at odd times of day or night. Well, sometimes the landlord needs to get into the unit to check on certain things in there. Like if you have a property, right, and you have a furnace in there and the furnace filter needs to be replaced once a month, you notify the tenant, hey, we're going to be coming in here so that we can replace this furnace filter. Well, we'll be coming in the daytime at 9 a.m. and the tenant's like, no, you can't come in here. Well, the landlord should have the right to be able to go in there and perform maintenance to the property the way that they, in order to keep it up. Okay, that's the way I see it. Now, there's already laws in place, everywhere that I've done, that I've owned rental property, there's already laws in place that say that landlord has to give appropriate notice to a tenant. But I also put in my leases that if there are emergency repairs that need to be made, then you have to give me access to the unit so that I can do that, whether it be in the middle of the night or not. Like, for example, if there was a water leak, a major water leak that could cause huge amounts of flood damage, and I need to get in there and it's 10 p.m., well, you better let me in. Okay? That's it. I mean, I could see in a place like California, especially, tenants saying, oh, well, I'm going to sue because he tried to come in here and fix that flood damage. No. I mean, it's still my property overall. Now, I'm not going to just barge in, and the few landlords who are doing that stuff, right, there's already rules against it. That's what I keep saying, You don't need a new law that allows the tenants to sue, okay? Because they're going to be suing the good landlords. In the end, the measure passed unanimously Tuesday night after a passionate 4-hour discussion. Mayor Dominic Aliano acknowledged not everyone in the community will be happy with council members' decision, but he said it was a move that needed to be made. I heard too many stories of landlords being bad actors and too many stories of landlords violating the rights that tenants do have, he said. And yes, I do understand that there are good landlords out there, but we had to discuss this and implement something like this to protect our community from certain landlords acting in bad faith. Now, this is a ridiculous statement by this mayor, okay? He's like, well, I understand there are some good landlords out there. No, you obviously don't understand that 99% of the landlords are good. You should mention that, hey, the grand majority, the overwhelming majority of landlords are good, okay? Instead, you act like, well, there's one or two good landlords. No, okay? The truth of the matter is the bad ones, the bad actors, are minuscule. They make up the far minority of the people who are doing things wrong. And, the tenants are going to come up. And here's the worst part. When you hear a story from a tenant, are you hearing both sides of the story? Or are you only hearing one side? And do you know the tenant's true motivations or not? You don't. Okay? You don't know the other side of the story. Did you talk to the landlord? Did you talk to anyone other than the tenants? No. The only people you talked to was an extremely biased, one-sided thing. When you go to court, there's two sides to every story, right? You have the plaintiff and the defendant, okay? So if a tenant is accusing a landlord of doing certain stuff and the landlord isn't there to defend themselves against those accusations and tell their side of the story, well, then you don't truly know what happened. All you know is, well, this tenant said, like as though people can't lie. That is one of the biggest flaws that I have just, noticed about a lot of these progressive left-leaning politicians. They seem to believe that people are being honest 100% of the time. No, they're not. Okay? People lie all the time in order to get their way, be it they don't want to be evicted or they want cheap rent or maybe they just don't get along with their landlord and they're trying to punish them for whatever reason, okay? But at the end of the day, if you don't hear both sides of the story, then you how can you make a rule, a new ordinance for the entire city, only hearing that one side? And let's see here. Then they got some statistics here about, the tenant right advocates are talking about. I'm not even going to read that. Why? Because I'm sick of reading about what the tenant right advocates say. They manipulate statistics. They do whatever they can to try to, garner sympathy and get these ridiculous socialist laws passed. So it says the new ordinance prohibits landlords from engaging in harassment, including but not limited to failing to provide services agreed to in the lease, changing a lease partway through its term, failing to perform required repairs and maintenance in a timely manner, abusing their right to enter a tenant's unit, attempting to force a tenant to vacate a unit through intimidation or other means, and interfering with a tenant's right to join a tenant's union. Landlords who violate the ordinance may be sued by their tenant. If the tenant wins, the landlord may be forced to pay between $2,000 and $5,000 per violation, plus an additional $5,000 if the tenant is elderly or disabled. Yeah, guess what? I bet everybody suddenly would have a disability under this ridiculous law. Oh, so I can get my extra $5,000, right? Nah, whatever. What a joke, So, you're reading through all of this, right? And you have to wonder to yourself, failing to perform required repairs in a timely manner. What do they consider a timely manner? For who knows how long, right? But I remember a good example was when I was trying to get a large tree removed from the yard of one of my properties, right? All of the tree services here in Omaha were so backed up. It took them 2 months before they were able to come out and cut that entire tree down. Okay, and the city was like, hey, if you don't cut this tree down, we're gonna start fining you. And I had to call the city basically on a weekly basis and tell them, hey, this is the fastest I could get a tree service out here to cut it down. And I'm not joking. I'm not refusing to do the work, but I have to wait until it's actually able to be done, and that's the case for a lot of these landlords. They're ordering parts, there's supply chain issues throughout the country right now. They have to, there's a shortage of good contractors and workers. You have to wait until it takes as long as it takes. That's the truth. Okay. So we're doing the best we can, but meanwhile, you're like, trying to fine us, you're trying to punish us, and we're doing the best we can. It's wrong, and I hate these additional ordinances. And you know what it does? I've told you this more times than I can count now. You're going to drive the good landlords out of the city, okay? You're going to leave the good landlords who are left. They're going to raise their rent so that they can cover these possible expensive costs that they could end up having to pay. So will this help housing be more affordable? Of course not, okay? We find out after all the articles I've read, after everything I've talked about in all my videos, that a lot of these affordable housing issues are actually caused by the bureaucracy that was created to stop housing from being unaffordable.